Hello, people. It's your boy Ambassador again doing this thing. Yeah, as usual, I jump on these videos just to give my opinion about it, but the intention is just to spark a thought. In agreeing or disagreeing with me, at least you think about it, and I want you guys to think about these things. So, excuse me, that's the intention. Just like, share, subscribe, pick up these conversations with your friends, talk about these things, comment about it, right? I'm definitely going to react to all the comments in the comment section because that's what I want. I want to engage with people on these topics. Today I'm talking about Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is a very important country in Africa because I think this is one of those formal or returnee countries of American slaves, which somehow still managed to get into so much poverty.
The kind of mineral resources we have in our country is enough to take care of everybody in that country. We should not have a single poor person in Sierra Leone. But unfortunately, we are not given the free will to make decisions on our own mineral resources. There's always Big Brother who decides. And when you fight and say, no, we are not going to do this, they use the system to stop you. It's either they set you up with the opposition and they'll be supporting the opposition against you from the back, or they cause unnecessary chaos in your country so that you are not able to even govern your own people. They will do things to make you not to be functionable. And of course, any country that don't have peace cannot develop. You have to have peace before you talk about development. I'll give you a simple example about Sierra Leone. Every mining company that is in Sierra Leone today is owned by a foreigner. Every mining company. If it's not the Chinese, it's the American, it's the British. Our electricity, Bumuda, is run by the British. And we still don't have light. We're looking for light, electricity. If you don't have electricity, how can you talk about education? How can you talk about health facility? How can you talk about improving the infrastructure of your country? We don't have electricity. Now, do we actually even have proper water, pipe-borne water, so that our kids will not be sick? We don't have those facilities. Why? With all the minerals we have, there is a cap you put. Before my husband became the president of Sierra Leone was benefiting, they said, what's the word? 0.000.1%. What is that? Basically, a company can take as much as $100 million out of the country in terms of minerals, and then they can just give the country $10,000. Now, what will $10,000 do for our health system? What is $10,000 do for our educational system? And these are the things I believe that are stopping Africa from progressing. We don't have a say. The sense about us celebrating independence, I don't know why we celebrate independence, because we are not free. That is my own take. I'm not speaking also on behalf of the government of Sierra Leone, nor am I speaking on behalf of His Excellency the President. I am speaking as Fatima, as a citizen of a country who believes that things need to change.
Because I always felt like Sierra Leone and Liberia should have had a different story, because if those Americans settled there, they should have come with some know-how. But I feel like something was still missing, and I'm learning a lot from the Sierra Leonean and Liberian model, because I feel like if the mistake which the Sierra Leoneans and Liberians made, that still led them to poverty. Even if our diaspora comes back to Africa and we don't correct those mistakes, Africa will still be poor. So I'm really looking at Sierra Leone and Liberia a lot, trying to understand what went wrong, that even after some of those, it's true that the level of economic power and technical knowledge of the returnee slaves or black Americans that came back to Sierra Leone and Liberia is not the same like those who will come back now, because they have really evolved in the American system. But still, what went wrong? Why did Sierra Leone and Liberia still getting so much war, bloodshed, and poverty? So, with that being said, the video I'm reacting to is this video from, I think she should be the Sierra Leonean First Lady. She always says disclaimer in all her videos saying that she's not talking as a Sierra Leonean First Lady. She's not speaking on behalf of the government. She's just talking as an African. And these are her views, which are very valid views. She paints a true picture of Africa. And she asks, like, it's something which I've always been bothered about. She touches it right at the core, saying that is Africa truly free? Because from slave trade, we went into colonization to, some people call it post-colonization, some people call it is it new independence, whatever. But for some reason, I feel like we're even in more bondage than so. Slave trade was really bad, but colonization was worse than slave trade to me. And these post-colonial era is worse than colonization in the sense that, let me explain. Um, when they were slaves, they knew that they were slaves. But when we were colonized, we were still slaves, but not that we were slaves. The only difference was they moved the plantations from the Americas to Africa. We were still working on those plantations, at times even for free and under worse conditions, but now it was in Africa. That's the only difference between colonization and slave trade. Because they were not, the plantations were in the Americas during slave trade, but colonization, the plantations were in Africa. Colonization came with its own difficulty in terms of the people were marginalized, manipulated, and all of that. But they were controlled by colonial masters. But independence was even worse than colonization because now we're not being controlled by colonial masters, we're being controlled by our own brothers in Africa. But this time it was worse because we did not even know that we're being controlled. That's the worst part, because now we don't even know how to fight against it because we have an invisible opponent, which is ourselves. Because our brothers are ourselves, we are being led by our brothers, we don't even know who is manipulating the system. So that's why I say that we are not free. I ask the question, are we free? Then also, I always mention in my videos as who plays the drum determines the tune. And whoever is funding the African system, as usual, I say I don't want to go too deep into my conspiracy theories and my underground research with some of these things. I'm not really ready for the heat that can come with some of those kind of discussions right now. But down the line, we'll have those conversations. I feel like Africans, we need to. And I always say, no, I'm not saying that be against Europeans or Americans. All my life, I've worked with foreign organizations. Most of my family, 80% is out of this country. So I have nothing with traveling abroad. I feel like the West has helped us a lot. But I feel like there are frank conversations we need to have with the West and every investor in Africa, which I don't blame the West for taking advantage of the African, because the capitalist world, and there's this statement which we say now in Africa, which we say, as you give yourself, so will you be taken. It's actually in French. They say, si tu te donnes, on va te prendre. That just means as Africans, if we don't think and we give ourselves cheap, we'll be taken cheap. So I don't blame the person who takes you cheap. I blame you for giving yourself cheap. So I'm talking to Africans so that we can start to think. I don't think it's anything against the West. I just feel like if we bargain better, we negotiate better deals, the West is going to give us those deals. Look at the case of China. China did not fight to become China. They just put in place their measures and put in place their policies, and the West is now dealing with them like almost equals, or giving them their own fair share of the deal to an extent. But if we as Africans are not thinking, we cannot blame the rest for taking advantage of us because we have refused to think. So, as usual, I react to some of these videos. I'm not going in the direction that she's saying. She mentioned all the controls involved, big brother in quote, the systems that manipulate Africa. We are always ready to sell our own. Who are the companies controlling Africa through our aristocracy and our elites and all of these things? I'm not going into those details like she has said. But I just feel like Africans need to think. If we don't think, we'll keep on suffering. And we cannot blame the rest for taking advantage of it, because survival for the fittest, the capitalist, well, you just have to stand your ground. I always say this. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. So if we as Africans don't learn to negotiate right, we'll always get the bad side of the stick. As usual, like, share, subscribe. It's your boy Ambassador. I'm out.
Just my opinion.